Does everyone here use Microsoft Excel? Does anyone here not use Microsoft Excel? Because I'll tell you, Microsoft Excel is really awesome. You can plug in all sorts of different formulas, and you can try and create your investment portfolio on Excel before you actually go out into the real world, start walking through properties, start submitting contract offers. You can see whether or not your strategy is doomed for failure or if it's poised for success. And this plus coupling the strategizing with narrowing your search criteria, you can actually go out and see very few homes in the flesh and be successful at building an investment portfolio. So this I call the 5-year, 5-property exchange plan. There we go. So this strategy is to purchase one asset per year in the first 5 years. I want to let you know, disclaimer, I am not recommending that you buy one asset per year for 5 years. I'm simply doing this as a mental exercise so that you can see how this particular calculation works out, what sort of equity it ends up yielding, what sort of return on investment it ends up yielding. But the nice thing about making it nice and even, right? One property per year for 5 years, is if you really like this strategy, do it times 10, and all you have to do is add zeros at the end of each line, right? So, let me I'm sorry, just turned that off. Okay, so you're going to purchase one asset per year in the first 5 years. Then, you're going to exchange one asset per year, keeping 5 assets continually in rotation. Everyone knows by asset, you mean like a real estate investment, right? Piece of property. The opposite of liability if you do it right. So on 5-year cycles, you're going to exchange your properties. Is anyone here like a really, really big fan of buy and hold, where you buy an asset and you keep it forever? Yeah? Okay. I'm not knocking that. Again, I'm not telling you this strategy is how you want to go. But if you take a look at this, one investment vehicle that's really hip on this 5-year exchange model is a DST. Anyone know what a DST is? Delaware Statutory Trusts. If you buy into these trusts, a lot of them will do this. So I'm actually stealing a page from their playbook where they'll buy an asset, intentionally hold it for 5 to sometimes 10 years, and then dump it. Cash out and then exchange and begin the cycle all over again. I figure if they're doing it, we could possibly do it too. In order for this strategy to work, the investor themselves must have a real estate broker's license or salesperson license, whatever it may be, to earn commissions on transactions. So each transaction you are boosting your return because you're pocketing the commission on your own transactions. These projections, just for the sake of making things easy, are based on using DSCR loans for each and every purchase. I'm not saying that you should use DSCR loans for each and every purchase, but for the sake of this exercise, that's what we're using. Anyone here know what DSCR stands for?
Debt service coverage ratio.
Debt service coverage ratio. Great. And what is the optimal LTV, loan to value, that you want to be hitting when you're using a DSCR loan?
Wait, about 20% or 18 to 20?
You're thinking ETV, right? Equity to value, right? So 20% equity to value. I found actually with most DSCR loans, they're drawing the line in the sand at 30% equity, which is a 70% loan to value, that if you hit that 30% threshold, they do not require you to pay PMI, which is, in my professional opinion, the enemy of good returns, because PMI, private mortgage insurance, is sheer expense. So in order for you to have a loan with less than 30% equity in it, a lot of these lenders will say, okay, well, you've got to pay a couple $100, extra insurance. And I don't like that, because it's an unnecessary expense.
$100,000 minimum too, isn't it?
Possibly, but in the interest of full disclosure, I am not a mortgage broker, I'm a real estate broker. So I would always advise you to consult with a mortgage broker on that. Loan officer. All right, so the required investment capital may be lower and returns may be higher if you use conventional financing. Why is that? Why would your returns be higher if you use a conventional loan as opposed to a DSCR? Because of the rates. Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 2%, right? Usually the difference between a conventional loan and a DSCR loan, maybe 2% interest difference. Maybe not that much, but maybe. All right, so your required annual investment for the first 5 years, you're gonna need $75K to $95K. Over 5 years, it's roughly $424,000 that we are putting into this scenario. But you don't dump the $424,000 in on year one. You dump 75 in on year one. You dump maybe 80 on year two, 85 year three, 90 year four, 95 year five. Loan to value 70%. For the purpose of this exercise, we've got an annual appreciation rate of 8%, compounding. Anyone know what the appreciation rate has been the last 5 years here in the Western New York market? Yeah, it's been a lot more than 8, I'll tell you that for sure. Your cash on cash return, which I'm calling return on investment for the sake of this exercise, we're gonna say is 8%. So cash on cash return, everyone knows, is different than cap rate, right? Capitalization rate includes appreciation. Cash on cash return is simply the amount of cash that it's spitting into your pocket, how much money that asset is putting in your pocket. Transaction closing costs, I'm going with $15,000 roughly. You know, again, for mathematical purposes, it's easy to say that each transaction is going to cost you $15,000. Your realized capital gains, when you do an exchange, 1031 tax deferred exchange, you will pay taxes on whatever you pull out of that realized capital gains. Unless you're Kamala Harris, then you pay taxes on the capital gains before you even took it. But I guess that's a moot point now, because she's not going to the White House. Exchange year ROI loss. When you do an exchange, you cannot count on your asset to be generating rent income for the months that you're caught in that exchange period. Because you're going to sell a property and you have no property until you acquire the exchange property. There's a 180-day exchange window that's actually required under the 1031 tax deferred exchange laws. You have to close on the purchase of your next property within 180 days. So I'm just using that again for the sake of this mental exercise. You guys should be able to do it faster than that. And then the real estate broker's commission, we're going to say is 3% per side, 2 sides to each exchange, meaning there's a buyer's side and a seller's side commission. Okay, let's take a look at, if I can zoom out a little bit, I'd like to show all of this. Maybe 150%? What do you think?
On the bottom right, there's a little plus and minus. You can get a little segment at a time.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so let me take a look at this with you. I don't know if this is going to be super boring. If I were giving this presentation to like high school kids, no one's going to follow me. It's going to be tough, right? But we're all real estate investors here, so everyone likes this kind of stuff, right? I do. I mean, I was happy to sit down and create this Excel spreadsheet. I was like, yeah, this looks pretty good. So please, for the sake of this exercise, just assume that I did my math right and that all the formulas are correct. What I do here is in year one, this column A shows you what year we are into the scenario. This column B shows you, oh, did I just, I did? All right, over here. So This column B shows you your gross profit in that year. So in year one of this scenario, you profit $12,000 from the activity. Portfolio equity is how much equity you actually have in the portfolio. This is not portfolio total market value. This is strictly equity, okay? How much of it is yours? So I told you year one you put in $75,000. Why do you only have $60,000 in portfolio equity if you just put in 75 grand? That's what 15,000 closing costs. Someone's paying attention. Good job. So you buy an asset, 60,000 in equity. That's 30% equity to value. Your asset is $200,000. Your ROI is going to be $6,000. That's actually your net rental income. Your commission is $6,000 because remember, you are your own real estate broker. So when you bought the property for $200,000, you got paid roughly 3% or $6,000. So your profit this year in year one is a function of your rental net income and your commission from the one transaction. That's where I get $12,000 in gross profit. In year two, our activity is to purchase asset number 2. The value of that asset is $216,000. Why did we buy an asset for $200,000 in year one and we're buying it for $216,000 in year two?
8% growth rate.
That's right. That is the appreciation value of real estate on the market. So in this scenario, you can't reasonably expect for 20 years straight to be able to buy a $200,000 property, at least not in an inflationary economy. You can't expect that. All right, so your ROI, this is your rent net income from the asset, and you have no commission here because this is asset number 1. Let me show you the chart. You just got to scroll up here. That's asset number 1. So what I did here is I played this scenario out. I'm just going to show you asset number 1, and then I'm going to show you what happens when we add in asset number 2, 3, 4, and 5. On asset number 1, years 2, 3, 4, and 5 have no cash out realized capital gains because you're not exchanging it, you're holding it for those 5 years. So your profit from this asset is going to be a function of your net income, rent less expensive operating, plus the commission of your transaction, which you only had when you bought it. And then, if you take a look here at gross profit, by the time year 5 rolls around, that's your gross profit is about $46,000, $46,178 a year. That's not strictly from asset 1. That's compounding from the other assets, which you can't see are off the screen. Asset 2, asset 3, asset 4, asset 5. And then, like I said, this field right here is your gross profit from the activity as a whole. So it's taking into account all of your assets. This is the first year that we're going to see an exchange, year 6, right? So you buy it in year 1, you're holding it for 5. In year 6, you do an exchange. In that exchange, you're going to sell it for hopefully more than you bought it, right? 8% compounding over 4 years. Probably sell it for about $293,866. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to hit that on the head, but again, these are mathematical projections. Here's your ROI, here's your cash out. So you're going to cash out of that capital gain exchange. You're not going to exchange all of your equity into the purchase of a new home. You're going to reserve some of that equity to pay yourself. If you see right here, I have realized capital gains. You're taking 15% out of each transaction. All right. This is the first year you're seeing an exchange. I want to show you something here that happens, and this is important for you to know. What's this? Wait a second. Why is it that the value of your assets growing, right? It's 200, 216, 233, 255, 272, 293. why the value of your asset just shrank? 283 there.
50% you took out.
Well, yeah, your realized capital gains that you're actually taking out, and as well as closing costs on the transaction, right? So this formula actually takes into account cost of the, if you see up here, this is actually the formula as it functions. I wonder if I can actually show you how that maps on the Excel spreadsheet. Might not be able to do that.
Don't look like it.
Yeah, so this is how it maps on the Excel spreadsheet. Basically, it deducts your closing costs, the cash out that you took from the capital gain, and you see it's highlighting the cells of the annual appreciation rate, G24.
So you get out of this, yeah, and you're gonna change the formula from the second.
How about I just control Z, control Z, okay. All right, so let's play this out over 5 assets. As you see, asset 2, you have a blank in year 1, because you're acquiring asset 2 in the second year of the exercise. Asset 3, you have a blank in years 1 and 2, because you're acquiring asset 3 in the 3rd year, you're acquiring asset 4 in the 4th year, you're acquiring asset 5 in the 5th year. So you see how that staggers over time. And if you take the combination of all of this math, this is what my scenario, my 5-year, 5 property exchange plan will yield you. Passive income. 5 years into this exercise, or let's say in year 6, you're making $67,000 roughly in passive income, and you now have portfolio equity of $432,943. Slightly more than what you put into it. So your portfolio equity didn't really grow too substantially, but what is nice is I really like this passive income. You're 5 years into the exercise, you're in year 6, and you're generating $67,000 a year in passive income. This is money that you don't have to work for, guys. Year 11, you're making $82,000 a year in passive income. Let's play this out for 20 years. If any of you plan on living 20 more years, I do. Now you got portfolio equity in the millions, and you're making $143,000 a year without doing anything but what? 1 exchange a year. That's it. So there's my mental exercise. If you guys aren't doing this sort of stuff with Microsoft Excel, projecting and planning for your future, highly recommend you do. And if you'd like to get a real estate license, or if you're interested in finding out more about how to get a real estate license, ask me. I'm a broker. I can even hang your license the first couple of years while you have to work under a brokerage when you first get your real estate license. It's New York state law requires me to supervise you. Kind of like when you get your learner's permit and you need a licensed driver in the car with you. Same thing under state law for the first 2 years at least before you get your own broker's license.